Afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this version of Medicaid Monday. My partner Frank Hemming and I are going to walk you through a number of current issues in Medicaid and Medicaid Home Care in particular. And as soon as I get there it is. There we go. So this is Pierro, Connor, and Strauss. We have offices here in Latham, New York. We have offices in New York City, and you'll see there around New York State. We also practice in several other states, but our practice is mostly New Yorkers. And so today we're going to talk about New York Medicaid and the planning necessary for Medicaid. And Frank, why don't you get us started here?
Sure. So we're going to talk about financial eligibility because anytime we talk about Medicaid, there's a lot of questions about how much you can have and how much do you make or can you make to qualify. Plus, we have our different programs. Usually we're talking either community benefits or nursing home. So we always kind of like to set a baseline as to what all that means. We're going to talk about some new medical eligibility things that just happened this month. So unfortunately, as we've been forecasting for quite some time, it's now a little harder to get Medicaid services for home care. So we're going to talk about how that's impact or what the consequences that are and how you need to now be assessed. We're going to talk about actually completing a little bit the application and talk about what that looks like and how to kind of set yourself up for success if it's not something that you need right now. And then we're going to talk about what happens after all this, right? And what you can do to make sure that things are looking good for you as time goes on.
So for this section, I always rely on Frank.
Yeah, so this is always the numbers part where everybody kind of glosses over, and that's fine. But again, just because it's one of those things where we're talking Medicaid, we have to talk numbers. We try to make it simple and digestible, but at the end of the day, it's not. And we try to make it as easy as we can. So if you're a single person in your house and you want to get Medicaid to come help give you home health aides, you have an income allowance of $18.20 per month. If you're a couple, it's $24.53 a month. And then you have your asset limits. So again, a single person is $32,396. A couple has a combined asset allowance of $43,781. And again, those bottom numbers, we talk about them just about every time we throw the numbers on the screen. But your community spouse income allowance, so that's what your spouse can have if you're on Medicaid, but your spouse is not, is in the community. They have a income allowance of $3,948. Just like the applicant, they also have a resource allowance. It falls between $74,820 and $157,920. And then again, that bottom number on the very bottom of the screen is the one that never changes. That's your income allowance. If you're in a nursing home, it's $50. It has been $50. It will probably be $50. No ifs, ands, or buts about that.
So there is movement to change that to, I think, $150 or $160, but that has not passed yet. These are the baseline numbers. You need to know where to start and looking at asset levels. We're going to focus on home care today. So we're going to take the nursing home. We have other Medicaid Mondays. If you want to go back and look at our videos, we have a whole library of 30-minute sessions on specifically nursing home Medicaid, promissory note planning, rule of halves planning. All of those things are in the library. We also have others that are there on different topics, so you can look through the library. Today, we're going to focus on the home care numbers. So to get home care, that number of $32,396 is the asset level for a single individual. And to get Medicaid home care, $1,820 is the income level for a single individual. And what we're going to talk about is some workarounds for both of those limitations. But first, there are other things that are not included in that, Frank. So that $32,000 number has some additions.
Yeah, so big one or big few that we have here on the slide is first your home, right? So if you're in your house or your spouse is in your house, or a disabled child is in your house. No, not a mouse. That's a nursery rhyme or Dr. Seuss. But as long as you, a spouse or a disabled child are in your house does not count. So if your house doesn't, so for most people, their home actually doesn't count as an asset when we do qualification analysis for your asset limits, which is nice because a lot of people walk in very concerned that your house is going to be taken and gone and all the bad things that can happen with that. And it typically isn't usually the case because we usually will have somebody in the house, whether it's the applicant themselves, if it's a home care case, spouse, if it's a nursing home case. So for many people, home doesn't count. Second big one, retirement accounts, IRA, 401, 403, 457, if it's tax deferred retirement funds, if it's in periodic payment status, which happens automatically at the age of 73 now, then your retirement account, the body of it is an exempt asset. The income that you draw off of it, so your required minimum distribution, that is part of your income. So that goes into the income calculation, but the body of the retirement account is not an asset, which is great. That's one of the few benefits I think people don't know about of living in New York, because many other states count your IRA or your retirement accounts as assets, but New York does not. You can also prepay a burial or funeral account in any real amount of money. So whether that's you want to have a lavish funeral or you want to just be put in a box or just cremated, it's up to you. But if you want to prepay it, they allow you to do that in any amount. And then one vehicle. So you can have any kind of vehicle that you want as long as it's just one. So it could be the nicest, it could be the not nicest, whatever it is, as long as you only have one car. That doesn't count as well.
So these are the exclusions from Medicaid eligibility of your assets. There are a lot of nuances to this. And just because your home may be exempt in the first instance while you're receiving Medicaid, you still want to take steps to protect the home long-term, get it out of your probate estate, because that's what Medicaid can collect against. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward. With regard to retirement accounts, you want to make sure they go to the right people. They're very complex at this point in time. So there's a whole separate category of naming beneficiaries. How do you do it properly? There's a new Secure Act 10-year rule. We're not going to go into that today, but all of these assets have certain nuances to them. The basics are here, but you have to know beyond that how to protect all of these things from a long-term perspective. And Frank, this is the new requirement. Why don't you walk us through that? Because this is not financial. This is healthcare.
No, this is kind of the other side of things. So whenever we discuss Medicaid with people, especially with a home care case, part of the discussion has to be what help does that person require, right? If what you need help showering, you need help getting in and out of bed, you need help to the bathroom, you need help in the bathrooms. It's what ADLs do you need help with? And here's a list on the screen. So I think most people know what all these things are. It's the things that you need to do as a functional human being to live your life. So the nice thing about Medicaid home care before was that you only needed to require assistance with 2 activities of daily living from that previous list. So you needed assistance with at least 2, or you needed supervision if you had a dementia diagnosis with at least 1 of those things. Well, now starting just about a week ago, as of the 1st of September, now these requirements have now been heightened. So now we need help with at least 3 activities of daily living from that list rather than 2. And if you have that dementia diagnosis, now you need supervision with at least 2 rather than 1. So for many people that are maybe looking to apply for this in the future, I'm not sure that this is going to be the biggest hurdle in the world, because unfortunately, when we counsel clients, a lot of times they need help or their loved one needs help with all of the ADLs or just about all of them. So if you have someone who needs significant amount of help, going from 2 to 3 probably won't rock the boat too much. But if you had somebody who was on the fence before, now they might actually be too healthy to get the help that they might either need now or soon need in the future. And now they're going to be put off from being able to apply. Because as much as we usually talk mostly about the financial eligibility, the stuff that we just went through with all the numbers, the second part of this whole equation is the medical piece. And for many cases, the medical piece it's not the part that's in question. That's not the part that we're really worried about. But as we continue to see things tighten and get harder, this is what we're concerned about, is they're going to start not only tweaking the numbers, but they're going to start making it medically harder to qualify too. And this is just kind of maybe the start of what they're going to be doing for some of that.
And again, we've covered the NIA process, the New York Independent Assessor, where you have a first level assessment, then you have a doctor's assessment, an independent physician appointed by the state of New York, and then you have a third assessment with a managed long-term care company, typically, which would be the assessment to determine the number of hours. We will be focusing on these going forward to see how the new rules are going to play out. And we'll be having future sessions on specifically how these are going to be interpreted in terms of the ADL requirements. And there's also, Frank, a cognitive impairment subsection of this.
Yes.
So if you lack the ability to make decisions for yourself, you have cognitive impairment, which can be a trigger for Medicaid eligibility.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, assessing people gets very difficult if you use just a generalized tasking tool, which is what Medicaid used for a long time, because anybody who's met any senior that needs help knows that one senior doesn't exactly need the same kind of things as another senior does. So unfortunately, as we're seeing the rise of cognitive impairments, we're concerned that the tasking tools aren't maybe going to be doing the best job of looking at the kinds of things that they need help with. Or there's other avenues if you go outside the MLTC realm or over to the NHTD waiver program and things like that, where maybe you can get some different services based on cognitive impairment, but there's also been talk about limiting access to those waiver programs as time goes on. So even if they're not clamping down on them like this, they're maybe looking to cap the enrollments for waiver programs like that, which we hadn't previously seen. So it's just another thing to keep in mind of, at the end of the day, when you're seeing just the amount of money go out of everyone's pockets to go to taxes to pay for Medicaid, and they're trying to tighten the budget up, this could be another way that they can do it.
So today we're going to focus on the financial elements of Medicaid eligibility, but we will be looking forward. The holy grail is that last assessment. When you go in and your doctor says you need 16 hours a day and the MLTC says you need 4. How do you build your case? How do you prepare yourself? How do you go through this process so that when the time comes, when the financial eligibility is in place, the assessments have occurred, you get the number of hours of care that you need, which is really the end game for all of this. But looking at financial eligibility, Frank, you have 2 different things to think about: income and resources. So why don't we start with resources?
Sure. So resources or assets, we say them interchangeably. They mean the same thing. So we'll try to be consistent. But when we say resources, it's, you have too much asset. You have too many assets. The best option typically for people to do is to create and fund a Medicaid asset protection trust, or it's a type of irrevocable trust. As Luke kind of mentioned earlier, we have a lot of previous education about these in our library. So if you want to look into specifically what a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust is and how it works more in depth than what we're going to talk about today, there are previous Medicaid Mondays and webinars available on the website.
And also written guides on our website for Medicaid eligibility, Medicaid application, and the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. So we have resources available on pierrolaw.com. But the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, Frank, is basically an irrevocable trust, which is managed for the benefit of the clients, who would be the Medicaid applicants, and their ultimate beneficiaries. So there's 2 classes of beneficiary.
Correct. When you make a trust, I think the easiest way to always keep it kind of in your head and keep it straight is just to think of a triangle. You kind of have 3 different groups of players.
Or a square.
Square here too. So you have the maker of the trust, that's the grantor. So this would be mom or dad or both if they needed services, right? You have the maker of the trust. You have your trustees of the trust, that's who's managing the trust during the lifetime of the makers or the grantors. And then you have the beneficiaries, that's who's going to get everything when the time comes. As Lou said, you have different beneficiaries at different times. You typically will have income beneficiaries. So that's usually the makers of the trust, where we allow income to be paid out to them during their lifetime. Could be interest, dividends off brokerage accounts, could be rental income if they have rental properties. There's a lot of flexibility here. And for home care cases, income works really well because of what we're going to talk about in just a few slides, because even if you go above that limit, there's a nice workaround to get through that. So increasing income if you're in a home care situation doesn't really complicate the puzzle too much. At death, we have to say where everything in that trust goes. Typically, that would be the children or the grandchildren or charities or wherever it is that people want it to go. But then the trust is set up then to make sure that the people benefit during their lifetime and that everything passes outside of probate to their beneficiaries following their death.
So 3 fundamental roadblocks, if you will, to clients accepting the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. And these are all navigable with proper planning. And when clients come into us, Frank, they have a lot of information that's not accurate. They come in with, I heard from my brother-in-law, neighbor, or somebody in the grocery store that I have to run to my kids to get money, that I can never get anything if I use this trust. But that's not how the trust works.
No, very rarely. The biggest things about your income, right, just to kind of set that record straight. So the income that you have, your pension, your social security, your required distributions, any of your income, right, still goes into your regular checking account, savings account, just like it does now. So even if you have a trust account like this, your income doesn't go in there. Your income is still used for you, especially if you're going on Medicaid Home Care, either now or in the future. We need that income to be available to you because of the other things we need to do with it. So it doesn't change your income in any way. And then the principal of the trust, that's the cash you put in, the stocks you put in. If you sell your house, it's the proceeds from that real estate sale. Typically, there are ways to get money out of that trust through your beneficiaries, which are typically children, but don't have to be. But it's a lot more flexible in reality than most people think. And it's not something where we would have people going routinely into the trust for every purchase that someone has to make. It's that if the bank account gets a little low, if you need to grab some money once or twice a year, on a sparing basis, there are ways to get money out of the trust where that can be used for the maker of the trust safely.
A little history lesson, the fundamentals of this trust came into the law in the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1993. And yes, I was practicing. I was long before that. Over 93 brought us the trust rules, and these are federal rules. New York State has tried to attack trusts. They did it for several years when Over 93 was enacted. They lost every time because they could not go beyond what federal law provides. Federal law has not changed in this realm since 1993, and literally we've been doing the same type of trust. We've modified it and improved it along the way since 1993. We literally have thousands. I've done thousands of these trusts that are out there. We have not had a problem with Medicaid or with the clients in terms of the administration of the trust. They are flexible enough. And these are the assets that you're going to protect in the trust: home, bank accounts, stocks, bonds, annuities, life insurance, business interests, real estate. Again, as Frank mentioned, the income can be yours if you want it, if you're going to create this trust. One of those roadblocks is the principal cannot come back to you directly, but the workaround is
So out through the children and the other beneficiaries, as it says on the slide. So there are people that can get the money. It just isn't you, and then it can be turned around and used for your benefit by your beneficiaries.
So for some clients, this is a difficult situation because they don't have individuals to be trustee or beneficiaries that they work well with or have a close relationship with in this context. So we want to make sure that we keep protections in the trust for our clients in the event that things do happen. So you can always change trustees. You can always change beneficiaries. Even though it says irrevocable trust, you have control over who the trustees are. You have control over who the beneficiaries are. And Frank, it has benefits that far outweigh any of the possible detriments.
Yeah, I mean, so just a few, right? Because there are more. So this is not an all-inclusive slide, but just for a few. One, it's creating eligibility for home care. So if you need home care, you still can create home care eligibility just about immediately because there's still no look back for home care. As much as we're anticipating that look back coming, it's still not here. So if you need home care now, we need about a month or two, and we can get you eligible for home care if you use a trust like this. Probate avoidance, that's a big one. Keeps everybody out of court, which for one is great because probate comes with cost, it comes with delay, it comes with possible fights with families. That's all avoided. And if you're on Medicaid, the last thing you want is to have something go through probate because Medicaid can come after and reclaim against your probate estate. So while we mentioned very early that the house is typically an asset that's not usually on the table, Luke kind of alluded to it already. You don't want that house sitting in your name and then you pass with it if it has to go then through your estate, because if that's avoidable, Medicaid will come and will grab against the house once you're gone if you don't do other planning. It also begins the look back period to protect against the nursing home. So as much as we want people to remain in their home, if something happens, then they're just not able to have that situation continue and they need a nursing home. If it's been more than 5 years, anything in the trust is then protected and safe from the nursing home, which is also great. It's hard to challenge. One of the most frequent questions I think that I get when I talk with families about wills is, well, who can challenge this or how does that work? Well, it's much harder to challenge a trust. It's not impossible, but it's much harder. It also keeps everything private, keeps everything out of the public eye, doesn't allow people to know kind of what you were doing or where you wanted things to go. And then you do have that expedited process once someone's gone, where you're much more on the timeline of the trustees and the other people signing off on things rather than the court through the probate. And I'm sure that there are more that I know that I can think of, but we just ran out of room on the slide.
New York law also gives us another advantage, and that is that even though the trust on its face says it's irrevocable, it can be revoked. People say, well, how is that possible? It's possible because New York law provides that if you get the consent of the beneficiaries, the trust can be revoked. Think about this. The consent of the beneficiaries is what's required, and who names the beneficiaries? You do.
Yeah,
so you can create beneficiaries, name beneficiaries. If your initial beneficiaries are not agreeing with you, you can find people who will, and you can actually break the trust. We've only broken the trust under circumstances where the trust was created and Medicaid nursing home care became necessary within a short period of time, because then you have an ongoing look back period. And sometimes it's better to start all over again, bring the assets back and redo the plan for something we call a rule of halves transfer. Again, beyond the scope of today's program, but go back and review the nursing home application videos. This is the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. It has worked tried and true for those 32 years since the federal law was enacted. We don't know how long it's going to be available, because as budgets tighten, as that $1 trillion Medicaid cut in the federal budget, the big beautiful bill, takes effect, what's going to be the impact long-term on Medicaid eligibility rules? Will New York State be able to stay the course and keep these kinds of things available to people here? So that is an unknown. We'll keep doing this until we know. But Medicaid income is also available, Frank, and that's something that needs to be factored in.
Yeah, and this is kind of a tried and true way of dealing with this whole situation. So we use a different type of trust. Instead of a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust for income, we use something called a pooled trust or a pooled income trust. It's essentially an account established with a nonprofit charity where they administer the funds on behalf of the Medicaid recipient. And the nice thing is all of your excess income above that $1,820 per month goes into this trust. And then that money then can be used to pay for things for the Medicaid applicant. Could be anything that benefits them. So housing payments like your rent, your mortgage, for additional food, clothing, entertainment, vacations. Can also pay for additional home care if Medicaid's not already providing enough home care and you need a little bit more. So there's a lot of great things that come with a pooled trust, in addition to just keeping your money to use for you. But just like the other programs that we've mentioned, there are past decks in Medicaid Mondays previous that where we had Sarah Grimes from NYSARC, who's been a very good friend and ally to us, where we talked about the ins and outs of pooled trust, how they work in some creative ways that funds can be used from them, that she spoke with me about. So if you want to go learn more about pooled trusts, go back in the archive and check out a previous Medicaid Monday for that as well.
So under normal circumstances, the pooled trust provides a phenomenal opportunity. We have some clients that have just too much income to spend from a pooled trust.
Yeah.
That have $13,000, $14,000 a month of income, and that becomes difficult because you want to be able to spend that money out. So there's never a one size fits all for any of this. Medicaid Asset Protection Trusts, we know we can get home care right away. The next month, today, the 2.5-year look back, which was passed 4 years ago, we're still waiting for word from New York State if and when that will be implemented. But for today, you can do this trust for asset protection. You can do the trust for income protection. Your assets are safeguarded. Your income is available to spend on things other than what Medicaid will provide, and it works. But the process can be somewhat daunting, Frank.
I think that's a good statement. So it's many documents. It's much paperwork. It's a lot of confusion, and a lot of people would just rather hire someone to help them with it, which is where sometimes we come in to help families, because rather than you deal with it, you get to pay people like us to deal with it. So obviously becoming organized before you file is key. Get all your information together. And then just important to just kind of, again, set timelines here. Medicaid looks at what you have as of the first of the month. So now that we're into September, so if as of September 1, you had too much money for asset purposes, well, now you can't apply in September. You're on the hook until October 1st. So that's usually why we say we can't create Medicaid eligibility immediately, because normally we have a month or two where we have to get things in order. That way, come the following first or 2 firsts from now, everything's on board and right where we want it to be, and then we can apply with that application.
Yeah. So you have to keep it, they call it the snapshot date. You have to keep that snapshot date in mind. That's the first of the month that you want to create Medicaid eligibility for. And you can't apply until you get all your statements for that first of the month. So it's a couple weeks in.
Yeah.
During COVID, it was several weeks in because statements were delayed.
Yeah.
But that's something that you have to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything that you would probably think of. It's proving who you are, where you live, what your income is, what assets that you have, and then the medical pieces that go along with both the qualification part, building the record for a possible appeal. And then just goes hand in hand with our previous discussion of the pooled trust. Only disabled people can use a pooled trust. So sometimes there are forms that have to go to your doctor to help show that you are a disabled person if you're applying for Medicaid Home Care. So that way you can use a pooled trust. Once we have it all together, we also fill out something called the Supplement A that accompanies the Medicaid application. Between the two, they talk about who you are, what your income is, what your assets are. We put everything together. We submit it to the Medicaid office for you. And then we have all the communication with the Medicaid office going forward. We deal with any issues. Sometimes they come back and they ask for more information. That's when we come back to the clients and ask you to maybe clarify something for us, get some updated information, or sometimes we already have the things or the answers and we just deal with the county office directly and we don't need any further involvement from the client.
So Frank, there are two kind of subtleties here. One is the pool trust requires additional information and gives the county additional time.
Yeah, it does. So by law, the county has 45 days to turn around a Medicaid application for home care. If it doesn't include a pooled trust, if it does, then that timeline gets extended to 90 days. So it's not one of those things that we like seeing because unfortunately, like most of the time people need help and they need it quickly. So we try to set timelines as appropriate with our clients, or if it's really an emergency situation, there always is the immediate needs application that can also be done in conjunction with the pool trust and everything else. But typically we don't have all those ducks in a row for immediate needs, but it is another way of getting home care in place faster if it's the right circumstance.
And if in doubt, file the immediate needs application because it has a truncated process and it's supposed to come back in 12 days?
Yeah, I believe 12.
And instead of 90 days if you're using a pool trust. So to accelerate this process, because as Frank said, people need care when they need it, and to wait 90 days to get help in the home, that's going to be a really interesting and difficult process, let alone if you don't get the hours that you need and you have to go to a fair hearing, which is the appellate process to challenge a determination that doesn't go favorably.
Yeah, and this is everything that we just went through. So the only real thing is that bottom bullet just says that the pool trust is also done at typically the same time or right after the application is submitted, because we want everything kind of going together in the same time. If you send a pool trust in without an application, the county's going to have no idea why they're getting that. So obviously the pool trust can't come before the app, but typically would go in either with the application or right after.
Yeah, simultaneously is the best way to do that. And again, getting everything done as quickly as possible and having access to all the right records will save time and delays, and it'll allow the decision makers at the county to process your application in a more timely fashion, especially if you throw the immediate needs request on top of that.
And then we have your medical piece. So once you get the financial approval, then you need to start working on your medical appointments, right? Your NIA appointments or your waiver, initiation through the waivers themselves. So we're not going to go through detail of how that looks like today, just because we're going to be talking about that pretty soon, close in the next month or two.
So stay tuned for upcoming episodes, but this has become the most difficult part of the Medicaid application process. And it's the state creating hurdles that you have to get over in order to get care. We can create financial eligibility relatively rapidly with an asset protection trust and a pooled income trust. You then get on and you get into the eligibility determination for medical purposes. We encourage our clients to build their case early. Go to your physician, get statements from your physician as to what your true needs are. Because if you do get a denial, if you do get a reduction in hours from what you think you're entitled to, you need to have that proof in place. And we want to have it in, if we can, as early in the process as possible.
Yeah, it never hurts, right? Might it help? Maybe, maybe not, but it never hurts. And it certainly would help in an appeal situation with either an internal appeal, an external appeal, or a fair hearing if it comes to it. Last slide of content for today. We just wanted to talk briefly about the differences between applications. So biggest thing is, again, no look back with home care. Nursing home, it's still 60 months, which means 60 months of statements for all your financials that you've had. Bank accounts, IRAs, life insurance, brokerage accounts. Basically, it's if you had it, they want to see it. They want to know what's been going on. We always get confusion with pooled trusts because they sound so good. Why doesn't everybody use them? Well, the option or the answer is you can't. If you're in a nursing home, you can't use a pooled trust. You can't save your income using a pooled trust. Be great if you could, but you can't. So you can only use a pooled trust if it comes to income. And then typically we don't really go after retroactive benefits for home care because the way that it kind of works is that it would just reduce your available or the spend down being sent to your pooled trust. It doesn't usually get anybody anywhere when it comes down to it if you need a pooled trust, but that's not the case for nursing home. So for nursing home benefits, we're typically filing, and then we're seeking retroactive benefits where past months would be paid for by Medicaid for the nursing home. So that's a little bit of a nuance too, just to clarify that.
Yeah, they go 3 months retroactively in the nursing home application. For Medicaid home care, you typically don't get benefits till you get benefits, until you start service in the home. And that's where the payments begin to flow. So the nursing home applications, we're going to cover those again in future topics, but we have them in the library if you need help with that. For home care, that's today's presentation for the financial eligibility component. And we're going to come back in the next few episodes of Medicaid Mondays, the assessment process. So all the things we just talked about, which has become the hardest part of getting Medicaid in the home, which is the NIA assessment, the physician assessment, the MLTC assessment, and the process that you have to go through to get Medicaid now with 3 ADLs instead of 2. That's October 20th, because I think a holiday falls on that Monday.
I was gonna say, please note it's not the second Monday next month because we do have a holiday.
So the third Monday in October, the 20th, will be our next Medicaid Monday. And the whole series can be, again, accessed at pierrolaw.com. That's